Every year, either in March or April, Christians across the world celebrate what some folks call Easter week. Some call it Holy Week. But another term for it is the Passion Week. And these videos are celebrating, observing, reminding us of some of the tremendous events that are some of the most important events for the Christian during what is called Passion Week. A few years ago, I was privileged to write a book on this subject. It's called Passionate, about the Passion Week. And having taught the life of Christ for about 40 years now, I just felt like it was time to put down in writing some of the special approaches that I take to this very, very important subject. Now, that word passion has more than one meaning, and it needs to have a little explanation. The way it's used in Passion Week is related to a Latin word which actually means suffering. So it's the week of our Lord's suffering. But yet that's not exactly accurate, because it traditionally begins on what is called Palm Sunday, or the triumphal entry. And it concludes not with a matter of suffering, it concludes with Resurrection Sunday. So whatever be the title for it, it is Passion Week. And I am so privileged to lead us in a few meditations on that subject. Now, let's imagine it's Friday. It's that original Passion Week. And Jesus has been condemned in Pilate's judgment hall, and he's made to carry a cross across Jerusalem, culminating in a place that the Bible calls Golgotha, the place of the skull. And that is called Good Friday. Now, that's the ultimate act of passion. Jesus began suffering, however, the night before in the Garden of Gethsemane. Actually, it's not even called the Garden of Gethsemane. We call it that. But its term really is Gethsemane. It's the olive press. So they gathered together in what was probably a cave. And there was really when the suffering of Jesus began. I can recall for you some things like his agony was so great that he sweated drops of blood. And medical authorities have even told me that there can be such a strain that the capillaries burst. So there was the beginning of the suffering. It culminated, of course, in the condemnation the next day by the Sanhedrin. They're turning Jesus over to Pilate and his condemnation there. Jesus was made to bear the cross. And there he began the Via Dolorosa. Now, Via Dolorosa is Latin for the way of sorrows. Maybe you would remember Sandy Patty in a song that she sang many years ago, the Via Dolorosa. The Via Dolorosa begins in Jerusalem, and while it's not so much observed by evangelical Protestants, there are many Roman Catholics and Greek Orthodox that will begin that final walk less than a mile from the traditional site of Pilate's judgment hall, through the various stations of the cross, some of which have a biblical basis, some of which are purely traditional, on his way to Golgotha. Of course, there today is what is called the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and it is the place that commemorates the place where Jesus was crucified and buried, and then he rose again. Particularly Roman Catholic pilgrims today will begin the Via Dolorosa with putting a cross on their backs or their shoulders, and traditionally carrying it that way, all the way to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Now, I want to shake things up a bit, okay? And we're going to be doing that in the next few videos, maybe even questioning some of the traditional ideas that we have about Passion Week. Here's what I want to say. The Via Dolorosa did not begin in Pilate's judgment hall. The Via Dolorosa did not begin in Gethsemane. The Via Dolorosa, think about this, began at least 3 months before and over 100 miles north of Jerusalem. One of the chapters in my book, Passionate About Passion Week, is called The Beginning of the Via Dolorosa. Now, what in the world do I mean by that? Let's move back in time in preparing for Passion Week by looking at the Great Galilean Ministry. The Great Galilean Ministry was made up of 2 sections, one for about a year, where Jesus was ministering in 3 missionary preaching healing tours. Then things changed, and Jesus made not 1 but 4 withdrawals to predominantly Gentile areas. He went up into what is today called Lebanon and ministered to a Gentile lady up there. He went over into the Decapolis, the 10 Greek cities, and ministered there and even fed the 4,000, even as he had earlier fed 5,000 Jewish people. But then he finally went north, way up north, to the very northern tip of the land of Israel today, to a place called Caesarea Philippi. And there in Matthew 16, in the midst of this withdrawal, Jesus really begins, can you believe, his Via Dolorosa. What do I mean? Jesus said to Peter, who do people say that I am? And Peter answered, some say you're John the Baptist, some say you're Jeremiah. But who do you say that I am, Peter? And Peter made a great confession. You are the Messiah. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus said to him, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven. And he said, you are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. A lot of debate about that. Was Peter the rock? Was the confession the rock? I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm going to focus in more on what Jesus began to do here that Peter objected to. He said, from that day on, I'm going to suffer, I'm going to go up to Jerusalem, and I'm going to be killed. What? Peter was not prepared for that. He said, far be it from you, Lord. Not that you could go and suffer. Excuse me for laughing at a very serious point, but Peter said, the Lord said to Peter, get behind me, Satan, for you are not favoring the things of God, but the things of man. What did he mean by that? When Peter said, no, I don't want you to suffer, he was actually standing as an adversary of what could take place. Because at that time, Jesus began for the very first time to teach about his going up to Jerusalem and suffering. Peter wanted nothing of it. He, at this point, wanted Jesus to go into Jerusalem as a conqueror and as a mighty warrior. He didn't want this suffering, but Jesus reminded him, this has to be done. Even to the point of calling Peter Satan, which simply means adversary. If you stop me, Peter, from going up to Jerusalem to suffer, you are opposing the plan that my Father has for me. Peter didn't quite get it. And it took a while even for the disciples for this to sink in. So the fact, some people say, this is the first time Jesus taught about his suffering? Yes, from that point on. And that's why I say the Via Dolorosa, the way of suffering and sorrow, did not begin at Pilate's judgment hall. It began at Caesarea Philippi, over 100 miles to the north, and 3 months before he ever gets into Jerusalem. Join me on the next video as we explore this a little bit further, and how such things as the Transfiguration also played a part in preparing for the suffering of our Lord in Jerusalem.